The rain was a relentless curtain against the windows of my small apartment in Minneapolis, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Bertram, a 43-year-old mechanic, had always prided myself on being a straightforward guy. What you saw was what you got: grease under my nails, a wrench in my hand, and a heart on my sleeve, especially when it came to my wife, Madalena. We'd been married for 15 years, a slow, steady burn of affection and companionship. Or so I thought. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Madalena, a vibrant kindergarten teacher, began coming home later. "Meetings," she'd say, her smile a little too bright, her eyes avoiding mine. I chalked it up to the usual end-of-term chaos. Then came the phone calls she'd take in the hallway, her voice lowered, her laughter hushed. My gut twisted with a nameless dread. I'm not the jealous type. I trusted Madalena implicitly, but the changes were undeniable. She was distant, preoccupied, as if a part of her was somewhere else with someone else. One Tuesday, she told me she had a parent-teacher conference that would run late. I offered to make dinner for myself. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing me perfunctorily on the cheek. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I tried to distract myself with a basketball game on television, but my mind kept circling back to Madalena. The silence in the apartment was deafening, amplifying my unease. Around 11 p.m., I decided to surprise her, bring her a coffee, maybe a pastry from that bakery she loved near the school. The school was dark, eerily silent. I parked my truck and walked toward the main entrance, peering through the glass doors. No lights. Had the conference ended early? Maybe she'd gone out for dinner with the other teachers. I pulled out my phone to call her, but hesitated. I didn't want to seem like I was checking up on her. I'm not that kind of guy. As I turned to leave, I noticed a light in one of the classrooms on the ground floor. Curious, I walked closer, my footsteps muffled by the damp grass. The window was partially obscured by blinds, but there was a gap just big enough to see inside. What I saw shattered my world. Madalena was there, not with parents or colleagues, but with a man. I didn't recognize him at first. He was taller than me, with slick-back hair and an arrogant smirk. They were close, too close. He was caressing her face and she was smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile I hadn't seen in months. Then they kissed. It wasn't a chaste peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of intimacy and desire. My breath hitched in my throat. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief and pain. I stumbled back, away from the window, my legs suddenly weak. The rain seemed to intensify, washing over me, but it couldn't cleanse the image seared into my mind. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. I drove home in a daze, the events of the past few minutes replaying in my head like a horrific movie. How could she? How could she do this to me? I sat in the dark, waiting for her. When she finally walked in, around midnight, she looked tired but composed. "Long night," she said, hanging up her coat. "How was the game?" "It was fine," I replied, my voice flat. I wanted to confront her, to scream accusations, but I couldn't find the words. I needed to process what I had seen, to understand how my life had suddenly become a lie. The next few days were a blur of anger, confusion, and sleepless nights. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus at work. Every time I looked at Madalena, I saw the image of her kissing that man. The trust that had been the foundation of our marriage had crumbled into dust. I finally confronted her on Saturday morning. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Who was he?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She feigned ignorance. "Who was who?" "The man at the school, Madalena. The man you were kissing." Her face paled. She stammered, trying to deny it, to explain it away as a harmless goodbye. But I had seen it with my own eyes. I knew the truth. "It was a mistake," she said finally, tears welling up in her eyes. "It didn't mean anything." "A mistake," I repeated, incredulous. "A mistake you made with your tongue down his throat." She started to cry, begging for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. She said she loved me, that she was confused, that she had been feeling neglected. But her words rang hollow. The damage was done. The trust was broken. I learned his name was Lysander. He was another teacher at the school, a charming, charismatic art instructor who had apparently swept Madalena off her feet. I was filled with a burning rage, a desire for revenge. I wanted to hurt him, to make him pay for what he had done, but I knew that revenge wouldn't bring back what I had lost. It wouldn't erase the image of Madalena in Lysander's arms. I decided to focus on myself, on healing, on moving on. We separated shortly after that. The divorce was painful, messy, but necessary. I couldn't stay with someone I no longer trusted, someone who had so easily betrayed me. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours at the garage, fixing cars, getting my hands dirty. It was a way to escape the pain, to numb the emptiness inside me. One evening, a few months after the divorce was finalized, I was working late when a woman walked into the garage. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Are you Bertram?" she asked. I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag. "I'm Gwyneth. I'm Lysander's wife." My heart skipped a beat. I tensed, preparing for a confrontation, but Gwyneth's voice was soft, apologetic. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for exposing Lysander, for showing me the truth." She explained that Lysander had a history of infidelity. He had cheated on her before, but she had always forgiven him, believing his lies. But when I confronted Madalena, it had triggered a chain of events that led to Gwyneth discovering the full extent of Lysander's deceit. "I left him," she said, her voice firm. "I'm starting over, and I owe it to you." We talked for hours that night, sharing our stories of betrayal and heartbreak. We found solace in each other's company, a shared understanding of the pain we had both endured. Gwyneth and I became friends. We spent time together, exploring Minneapolis, trying new restaurants, going to concerts. Slowly, tentatively, our friendship blossomed into something more. I never expected to find love again, not after what Madalena had done. But Gwyneth was different. She was honest, compassionate, and genuine. She understood my pain, my fears, because she had experienced them herself. We married a year later in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. It wasn't the fairy-tale wedding I had once imagined, but it was real, authentic, and filled with love. I still think about Madalena sometimes. I don't hate her, but I can't forgive her. She made a choice, and she has to live with the consequences. I heard through the grapevine that Lysander left her for another woman shortly after our divorce. Karma, I guess. I learned a valuable lesson from that experience. Trust is precious, fragile. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But betrayal doesn't have to define you. You can survive it, you can heal, and you can find love again. It may not be the love you expected, but it can be even better, even stronger, because it's built on a foundation of honesty and understanding. I look at Gwyneth, my wife, my partner, my best friend. The rain is still falling outside, but inside my heart is warm and full. I am Bertram, a mechanic from Minneapolis, and I am finally, truly happy.